Today we're looking at a recent British Columbia Supreme Court decision involving a defamation lawsuit against Law Society of British Columbia. The case raises important questions about free expression, defamation law, and how professional regulators can respond publicly to controversy. Background of the case. The plaintiff, James Heller, is a practicing lawyer in Victoria. In 2024, he raised concerns about the Law Society's mandatory Indigenous intercultural course, specifically how it described unmarked graves at the former Kamloops residential school site. Heller argued that the course materials were factually inaccurate and proposed a resolution to change the wording from confirmed burial sites to potential burial sites. That resolution sparked public backlash. Soon after, the Law Society issued a press release criticizing the resolution and linking to a statement from the BC First Nations Justice Council that described it as racist. Heller then sued, claiming the press release defamed him by implying he was racist, and also alleged negligence and emotional distress. What was before the court? This wasn't a trial on defamation itself. Instead, Heller asked the court to strike the Law Society's response entirely, arguing it raised no valid legal defenses. It was scandalous, ideological, and abusive. It improperly attacked his character, and that a prior Court of Appeal case had already settled the factual dispute. The legal question was narrow but important. Should the Law Society even be allowed to defend itself using this response? The court's analysis, Justice Chan applied the strict legal test for striking pleadings. To succeed, Heller had to show it was plain and obvious that the Law Society's response had no reasonable chance of succeeding. The court said that high bar was not met. Here's why. Defenses were properly pleaded. The Law Society denied the press release was defamatory, but even if it were, it pleaded recognized defenses under Canadian defamation law, including fair comment, qualified privilege, responsible communication on a matter of public interest. The court held these defenses were arguable based on the public nature of the issue and the Law Society's regulatory role. That alone was enough to let the case continue. Context was not ideological abuse. Heller argued the response was bloated, ideological, and driven by social justice advocacy rather than law. Justice Chan rejected that argument. The historical materials referenced, including Truth and Reconciliation Commission findings and expert commentary, were relevant context, not political messaging. Courts allow wide context in defamation cases because meaning depends on how statements would be understood by a reasonable reader. Prior case didn't decide the issue. Heller relied heavily on a Court of Appeal decision, arguing it settled the wording dispute. The judge disagreed. That case dealt with sentencing bias, not factual findings about burial sites, so it didn't prevent the Law Society from advancing its position. One important correction ordered. Although the Law Society largely succeeded, the court did require amendments. Justice Chan found that describing Heller as offensive in several paragraphs of the response was unnecessary and inflammatory. The Law Society was ordered to remove that wording and replace it with more neutral language. This is a reminder that even in legal pleadings, tone matters. Discovery complaints rejected. Heller also argued the Law Society failed to properly disclose documents and respond to a notice to admit. The court disagreed, finding the responses were not evasive, document production was ongoing, any remaining disputes should be handled through regular procedural motions. Final outcome. The application to strike the Law Society's response was dismissed. Minor amendments were ordered for tone. The case will proceed toward trial, where defamation and malice can be properly decided. Why this case matters. This decision reinforces three key principles. Striking pleadings is exceptional, not routine. Public interest speech receives strong procedural protection. Courts distinguish between disagreement and defamation. The merits of the defamation claim remain undecided, but both sides will now have the chance to fully present their case at trial.